That was not part of the music, Hannah whispered. The sound came again. Click. Small enough to disappear beneath violins, laughter, and the scrape of silver cups across polished oak. Hannah Miller stood beside the peace treaty table with a tray balanced against one palm. Around her, Silver Pine Tavern had been transformed for kings. Pine garlands covered the beams. Black wolf banners hung from the stone walls. Hundreds of candles turned the great hall gold. No one looked toward the western balcony. Hannah did. A musician struck the wrong note and recovered immediately. Nobles continued speaking. Guards remained beside the doors, hands resting near their swords. Another speck of wood dust fell from the carved wolf above the balcony rail. It landed beside the treaty ink. Hannah set down a goblet and wiped the table with her linen cloth. The motion allowed her to bend closer without appearing curious. Waitresses were permitted to clean. They were not permitted to investigate. A thin silver line glimmered inside a crack beneath the carving. Not decoration. Wire. Her father had used similar wire when repairing hunting crossbows. It connected the release lever to the trigger mechanism, carrying pressure through places a hand could not reach. Hannah's pulse quickened. She moved around the table, pretending to straighten the chairs. At the center of the floor, directly before the treaty parchment, someone had drawn a small white mark in chalk. A standing position. She followed the angle upward. The carved wolf's open mouth pointed straight toward it. Straight toward a man's heart. Is something wrong? The head steward stood behind her. Hannah lowered her eyes. The chair is uneven. Then fix it and stop staring at the balcony. She adjusted the chair. Its front legs had been moved 3 inches left of the old floor scratches. Not by accident. The new position placed whoever sat there directly beneath the silver line. The musicians began a louder piece. Hannah looked toward them. Beta Logan Pierce stood beside the raised platform, speaking quietly to the lead violinist. He wore dark armor beneath a formal cloak, his expression calm and unreadable. The music grew louder. The clicking vanished beneath it. Hannah carried her tray toward the western wall. As she passed beneath the balcony, the smell reached her. Machine oil, beeswax, hot silver. She knew that scent. Her father had warned her never to stand before a loaded crossbow, even when it appeared safe. The weapon speaks before it fires, he had told her. Most people die because they mistake the warning for nothing. Hannah touched the carved support beam. Black wax covered a hole no wider than a fingernail. Someone had sealed it to hide the opening until the final moment. Above her, the wire tightened, then relaxed. A test, not a failed shot. Someone was checking the mechanism before the king arrived. The eastern doors opened. Cold wind entered first. Then Alpha King Ryan Blackwood stepped into Silver Pine Tavern. He was tall enough to rise above the guards surrounding him, broad through the shoulders beneath black leather armor and a heavy wolf fur cloak. His dark hair carried melting snow. His gray eyes passed across the hall with the controlled attention of a man accustomed to finding danger before it reached him. But he did not look toward the balcony. Logan approached and guided him toward the treaty table, toward the white chalk mark. Hannah saw the silver wire move again. Click. Ryan placed one boot beside the marked position. The carved wolf above him shifted by less than an inch. Hannah's hand tightened around the tray. The weapon was already aimed, and the man controlling it had just learned the Alpha King was standing exactly where he needed him. The chair had been moved 3 inches to the left. Hannah knew because the old scratches remained visible beneath its front legs. Alpha King Ryan Blackwood stood beside it while Beta Logan Pierce welcomed the northern delegates. Snow melted along the hem of Ryan's wolf fur cloak. His broad shoulders filled the space between 2 guards, and the silver crest at his chest caught every candle in the hall. Above him, the carved wolf waited. Its wooden jaws pointed directly toward his heart. Hannah crossed the floor carrying a tray of dark wine. She counted the distance. 12 steps from the western wall. 6 from the treaty table. 1 white chalk mark beneath Ryan's right boot. The position had been chosen with care. Logan moved behind the chair and adjusted it again. Only an inch. Ryan glanced over his shoulder. Is the floor uneven? The delegates requested a clearer view of the signing, Logan said. His voice was calm. Too calm. He placed one hand against the chair's carved back and guided it farther into the line of fire. Hannah nearly stopped walking. A waitress who froze while carrying royal wine became noticeable. A waitress who spilled it became punishable. She kept moving. Your Majesty, she said, reaching the platform. Wine? Ryan turned toward her. Up close, he was more imposing than the banners made him seem. Very tall, broad through the chest beneath black leather armor. Dark hair brushed away from a sharply masculine face, marked by a faint scar near the jaw. His gray eyes settled on the tray, then on Hannah. No, Logan reached for one goblet. The king should drink before the signing. Ryan's gaze remained on Hannah. You were watching the balcony. It was not a question. Hannah felt Logan look at her. I was checking the candles, Your Majesty. There are no candles on the western balcony. The wire above them shifted. A faint metallic scrape moved through the music. Hannah's pulse struck hard. Ryan had heard something. Not enough. Then I was mistaken, she said. Logan lifted the goblet, but did not drink. Servants often are. Captain Daniel Brooks approached from the eastern aisle. He wore the same black wolf crest as Ryan, but his hand rested closer to his sword. The southern pack has arrived, Daniel said. We can begin. Ryan stepped toward the chair. The white chalk mark disappeared beneath his boot. Hannah saw the angle complete. From the balcony carving to the center of his chest. Perfect. She looked toward the musicians. Logan gave the lead violinist a small nod. The bows moved faster. Music filled the hall until conversation became difficult. Noise to cover metal. Noise to bury the warning. Hannah lowered the tray and deliberately let one silver spoon fall. It struck the stone floor beside Ryan's foot. The sound echoed upward. From inside the wolf carving came a hollow metallic answer. Ryan looked down. Logan did not. He was watching Hannah. She bent to retrieve the spoon. From that lower angle, she could see beneath the treaty table. A second chalk line ran across the floor toward the western wall. Not a mark for furniture. A guide for the shooter. Hannah rose slowly. Ryan's chair had not merely been moved. The entire signing position had been aligned with the hidden chamber above. Is something wrong? Daniel asked. Hannah opened her mouth. Logan stepped between them. The waitress dropped a spoon. His hand settled lightly against her shoulder. To the watching nobles, it looked like guidance. His fingers pressed hard enough to bruise. Return to the service corridor, he said. Hannah looked at Ryan. The Alpha King studied Logan's hand on her shoulder, then the chalk beneath his own boot. Before he could speak, the western balcony clicked again. This time, the sound was followed by a tighter pull of wire. Someone had tested the trigger, and Ryan Blackwood was still standing in the killing line. The first sign was oil on a royal guard's cloth. Hannah found it beneath the western balcony after Logan ordered her back to the service corridor. The linen had been folded beside a water bucket, as though someone had wiped their hands and meant to return. One corner carried a dark amber stain. She touched it with one fingertip. Machine oil, thicker than lamp oil, sharper than saddle grease. Crossbow oil. The second sign waited above the ventilation grate. A thin cord passed through the iron slats and disappeared into the wall. It was almost invisible against the soot-dark stone, but the music made it tremble. Every pull from somewhere beyond the hall tightened the wire behind the carved wolf. Someone did not need to stand on the balcony to fire the weapon. They could release it from another room. Hannah followed the cord through the servants' passage, carrying an empty wine jug so anyone watching would see only a waitress returning to work. The line ran behind the tapestry wall, then upward, toward the private council chambers. Footsteps sounded ahead. Hannah turned into an alcove and pressed herself behind a stack of folded tablecloths. Lady Rebecca Hayes entered the passage with a royal guard. She wore deep blue velvet beneath a white fur mantle, her blonde hair pinned with silver combs. To the court, she was a northern ally. To Hannah, she was standing beside a man whose cleaning cloth smelled of crossbow oil. The wax is failing, the guard whispered. Then replace it. The king noticed the floor marks. Rebecca's voice remained calm. Logan will keep his attention elsewhere. The guard removed a small black wax block from his belt, the same color covering the siding hole beneath the balcony carving. Hannah held her breath. Rebecca stopped. For one terrible moment, Hannah thought she had heard it. Then a servant called from the kitchen, and the two continued toward the council rooms. Hannah waited until their footsteps faded. The third sign was hidden inside the carved wolf. She climbed the narrow service stairs to the balcony, moving between musicians' cases and rolled banners. The music below shook the floor beneath her knees. Up close, the carving looked older than the tavern. Its wooden teeth were worn smooth. Its eyes had been freshly drilled. Black wax covered the right pupil. Hannah scraped it away with the edge of a spoon. Behind the hole, A silver bolt rested inside a compact crossbow frame. The weapon had been built into the balcony rail, its point aimed downward, straight toward the treaty table. Hannah examined the mechanism without touching the trigger. A new iron latch held the bowstring under tension. Fresh wood surrounded the screws. Beeswax sealed the joints to prevent them from creaking. Someone had planned this for weeks. She lowered her face to the sighting hole. Ryan stood below, speaking with Captain Daniel beside the white chalk mark. Logan remained near him, always near him. Hannah needed proof the cord led to Logan's rooms. She removed a copper coin from her pocket and returned to the hall. At the treaty table, she let it slip from her fingers onto the chalk mark. The coin struck stone. Its sound traveled upward. A hollow echo answered from inside the carved wolf. Ryan looked at the balcony. Hannah looked toward the western wall. The hidden cord pulled tight. She saw it now. A faint line crossed the ventilation grate, passed behind the musicians, and disappeared through a narrow opening beneath Logan's private council door. Hannah. Captain Daniel's voice stopped her. He stood only a few steps away. She turned toward him. I need to show you something. Logan entered the passage before Daniel could answer. His eyes moved from Hannah's face to the copper coin beneath the table, then to the faint oil on her fingers. He understood exactly what she had found. The music rose around them. Logan smiled. What could a waitress possibly have heard? He asked. That matters more than peace. Servants do not hear treason, Logan said. They hear only what they are paid to carry. Captain Daniel looked from Hannah to the Beta. The music continued beyond the corridor, loud enough to bury every private word. Hannah held the oil-stained cloth in one hand. I found a crossbow inside the western balcony. Daniel's expression sharpened. Logan laughed softly. A hidden crossbow. It is built behind the carved wolf. A silver bolt is aimed at the treaty table, and you climbed into a restricted balcony during a royal gathering. To find the weapon. To place it, perhaps. The accusation arrived too quickly. Prepared. Lady Rebecca appeared at the far end of the passage with 2 guards. Her blue velvet skirts moved silently across the stone. What has happened? Logan turned toward her. The waitress claims someone intends to assassinate the king. Rebecca's face showed concern. Perfect concern. How terrible. Hannah looked at Daniel. The trigger cord runs through the ventilation grate and toward the private council rooms. Logan stepped closer. What cord? The one beneath your door. His eyes changed. Only slightly. Daniel noticed. Show me, the captain said. Hannah led them toward the western grate. The thin line should have crossed the soot-dark iron. It was gone. Only a shallow groove remained where the cord had rubbed against the metal. Rebecca folded her hands. There is nothing here. There was. Logan reached into Hannah's apron pocket before she could stop him. He removed a length of fine cord. The same color. The same thickness. Hannah stared at it. She had never seen it before. Logan held it up for the guards. You mean this? Rebecca's gaze dropped to Hannah's hands. Crossbow oil still darkened her fingertips. Daniel's jaw tightened. Hannah, where did you get the cord? I did not. Logan turned the line between his fingers. A servant enters the balcony, carries machine oil, and hides trigger cord beneath her apron. I found the oil on a guard's cloth. Which guard? Hannah looked toward Rebecca. The man who had accompanied her was gone. No witness. No cloth except the one in Hannah's hand. Rebecca took it carefully. This bears no royal mark. It was beside the western bucket. A cleaning rag could belong to anyone. The second ceremony bell sounded from the hall. Daniel glanced toward the doors. Warriors from 7 packs were waiting for the treaty. Any public search could be mistaken for distrust. Any delay might undo months of negotiation. Logan understood that. The ceremony proceeds, he said. Daniel faced him. That is the king's decision. And if you stop the signing because a waitress heard a click, every enemy outside these walls will believe Blackwood fears betrayal. Hannah stepped toward Daniel. Search the wolf carving. Rebecca moved between them. Enough. Her voice carried the authority of a noblewoman accustomed to obedience. She has already entered restricted rooms and disturbed the treaty platform. Search her quarters before she destroys more evidence. One guard bowed. Immediately, my lady. Hannah felt the trap closing. If Logan had placed cord in her apron, he had placed more beneath her bed. Captain, do not send anyone to my room. Daniel looked at her. Why? Because whatever they find will not belong to me. The third bell began. From inside the hall came the scrape of chairs and the heavy rhythm of armored men taking their places. The signing was starting. Logan took Hannah by the arm and guided her toward the great hall. His grip looked gentle. It was not. "You will return to your station," he whispered. "You will carry the king's wine. You will keep your eyes lowered. And if I do not, then the peace fails because of you." The doors opened. Ryan stood beside the treaty table beneath the carved wolf. The chalk mark remained beneath his boots. Hannah entered carrying an empty tray while every guard watched her. Above the music, the hidden cord tightened. She heard with strain inside the balcony rail. Logan released her arm and moved to Ryan's side. Lady Rebecca took her place among the northern delegates. Captain Daniel remained near the doors, uncertain whom to trust. Ryan looked toward Hannah. He saw the bruise forming where Logan had held her. Then he saw the cord in the Beta's hand. Before he could ask, Logan raised the treaty parchment and began reading the oath aloud. His voice covered the first metallic pull. Hannah looked up. The wax had fallen from the wolf's eye. The silver bolt was visible now. A guard seized her elbow. "Stay in your place." The trigger mechanism clicked halfway into position. The next sound would release it, and Ryan Blackwood was stepping directly beneath the weapon. "Keep still." Hannah spoke so quietly that Ryan almost turned to hear her. The hidden mechanism clicked. Not the testing sound from before. The final sound. Release. Hannah tore her arm from the guard's grip and ran. Logan was still reading the treaty oath. His voice rose over the music, each measured word designed to bury the strain of wood above them. Ryan looked toward Hannah. Confusion crossed his face. Then recognition. He saw where she was looking. The carved wolf's right eye stood open above the balcony. Silver flashed inside its mouth. Ryan shifted his weight. "Keep still," Hannah shouted. Every face in the hall turned toward her. The bowstring snapped. Hannah reached him in the same instant. She struck Ryan's chest with both hands. Not hard enough to move him from the chalk mark, only enough to throw herself between his body and the descending bolt. The silver arrow cut through the shoulder of her dress. Pain arrived as heat, then force. Hannah spun against Ryan and lost the tray from her hand. Goblets struck the floor. Wine spread across the treaty parchment like blood. Ryan caught her before she fell. The entire hall stopped breathing. For one heartbeat, Hannah heard nothing except the ringing inside her skull. Then Ryan's arm tightened around her waist. "What hit you?" She tried to answer. The bolt had torn through the outer flesh above her shoulder, pinning part of her apron strap to the thick edge of Ryan's cloak. It had missed bone. It had missed his heart. Hannah looked up. The carved wolf remained open. Inside the dark wooden jaws, another mechanism moved. A second string. A second bolt. This one was not aimed at where Ryan had been standing. It was angled lower, toward his throat when he bent to catch her. "Down," Hannah whispered. Ryan reacted immediately. He dropped to one knee, pulling Hannah with him, and seized the heavy treaty table with his free hand. The second crossbow fired. Ryan overturned the table. The silver bolt struck the oak with enough force to drive halfway through it. Warriors shouted. Chairs scraped backward. Captain Daniel drew his sword and ordered the doors sealed. Logan stepped away from the platform. Too quickly, Lady Rebecca raised one gloved hand toward the western gallery. A signal. 3 royal guards turned their swords inward. Ryan saw them. He lowered Hannah behind the overturned table and ripped the pinned apron fabric free from the bolt. "Can you move your arm?" "Yes." The answer was a lie. He knew it, but he did not waste time arguing. Steel rang beyond the table as Daniel intercepted the first false guard. Another attacker rushed from the musician's platform with a short blade hidden inside a violin case. Ryan seized the embedded bolt, snapped the wooden shaft, and handed the silver head to Hannah. "Keep it. Evidence." Even now, Hannah closed her fingers around it. Above them, the hidden cord continued sliding through the ventilation grate. Someone was withdrawing the trigger line, destroying the path back to the room where the assassin waited. "Logan," Hannah said. Ryan's gray eyes found his Beta across the confusion. Logan stood beside Lady Rebecca, one hand beneath his cloak. Not protecting the king, protecting the cord. Ryan rose behind the overturned table. A false guard lunged. Ryan drove him backward with one controlled strike, then placed himself between Hannah and the fighting. "Daniel," he called, "take the balcony alive." Logan's composure broke. He pulled the hidden line. A third click sounded beneath the platform. Not above them. Below. Hannah felt the vibration through the floor before anyone else did. The first bolt had not been meant to kill Ryan. It had been meant to make him bend. The second had forced him behind the table. And now a third crossbow waited beneath the place where he had taken cover. Hannah looked at the narrow seam between the floorboards. A silver point began rising through the wood. She drove her uninjured hand against Ryan's side. Move. The weapon fired upward. The bolt shattered the silver wolf insignia at Logan's chest instead. He stumbled back, staring at the broken crest. Ryan turned toward him. The hall fell silent around the sound of falling metal. Hannah remained on one knee, blood warming her sleeve. The first bolt clenched in her fist. Logan looked from the shattered insignia to the waitress who had ruined every angle of his plan. Then he pointed at her. She built the weapon, he said. Arrest her. And half the guards obeyed. The guards reached Hannah before Ryan could turn. Two seized her arms. A third tore the silver bolt from her hand and held it above the blood spreading across her sleeve. Evidence, Logan said. She carried the weapon. She pulled it from her shoulder, Ryan replied. His voice was quiet. The guard stopped. Not because the accusation had weakened, because the Alpha King had not raised his voice. Ryan stepped between Hannah and the nearest sword. Release her. Logan pressed one hand against his shattered insignia. Your Majesty. She entered the restricted balcony, carried trigger cord, and knew where every bolt would strike. She knew because she heard them, or because she designed them. Lady Rebecca moved toward the northern delegates. We came here under a promise of peace. Now a Blackwood servant has attacked her own king while hidden weapons fire from his hall. The accusation struck exactly where it was meant to. Northern warriors reached for their swords. Blackwood guards answered. The two packs faced one another across the ruined treaty table. One frightened movement would begin the war the gathering had been meant to end. Hannah pressed her uninjured hand against her shoulder. The bolt had passed through flesh, but the bleeding was growing heavier. She could feel each heartbeat beneath the torn linen. Then she heard another sound. Not a trigger. A wooden bar falling into place. The eastern doors had been locked from outside. Lady Rebecca lowered her raised hand. On the western gallery, 3 musicians abandoned their instruments and drew short crossbows from beneath the benches. Balcony, Hannah shouted. Ryan overturned a second table as bolts struck the floor around them. Captain Daniel pulled 2 delegates behind a stone pillar while loyal guards charged the musicians' stairs. The false guards who had obeyed Logan drew their blades. The attack became open. Ryan caught the wrist of the first man and drove him into the treaty platform. He moved with controlled force, never leaving enough space for an attacker to reach Hannah. Logan retreated toward the western passage. Hannah saw the trigger cord still disappearing beneath his cloak. He is taking the line with him. Ryan followed her gaze. Logan pulled once. A hidden panel opened beneath the musician's platform. Armed men entered through the wall wearing northern colors. Rebecca pointed toward them. Blackwood assassins. They are yours, Daniel shouted. No one could prove either claim while steel filled the hall. That had always been the plan. Kill Ryan. Make both packs witness the other side's colors. Let fear complete the war. Hannah looked at the silver bolt one guard had dropped. A strip of blue thread clung beneath its metal head. The same blue as Rebecca's velvet sleeves. She reached for it. A false guard kicked the bolt away and raised his sword. Ryan crossed the distance before the blade fell. He struck the attacker once and caught Hannah against his chest when her knees weakened. You are bleeding. The doors, she said. They locked the doors before the second attack. Daniel fought toward them. The eastern exit is barred. The service hatch beneath the platform, Hannah said. It opens from the cellar. Ryan looked toward the narrow seam in the floor. You know the route? I serve through it every feast. He placed one hand behind her back. Then lead. They moved behind the overturned tables while Daniel and 3 loyal guards covered them. Hannah found the iron ring hidden beneath the ceremonial rug and pulled. The hatch opened. Cold cellar air rose through the gap. Ryan lowered the wounded delegates first. Then Rebecca drew a narrow blade from her sleeve and lunged toward Hannah. Ryan caught her wrist. The knife stopped against his palm. Rebecca smiled. You protected the wrong servant. Hannah saw movement behind him. Logan stood at the passage entrance with a compact crossbow aimed at Ryan's back. The mechanism tightened. Click. Hannah did not think. She drove her wounded shoulder into Ryan and forced both of them toward the open hatch. The bolt passed above them and struck Rebecca beneath the fur mantle. She collapsed against Logan. His face changed. The weapon had hit his own ally. Hannah looked at the angle of the shot. Then she understood. Rebecca had never been a partner Logan intended to save. Ryan pulled Hannah behind the stone edge as guards closed around the Beta. The assassination had 2 targets, she whispered. Ryan looked toward Rebecca, then Logan. The king and the witness. No. Hannah watched Logan abandon Rebecca and run toward the council corridor. You and everyone who could name him afterward. Ryan ordered Hannah's arrest before Rebecca's blood reached the floor. Take the waitress, he said. The command cut through the fighting more sharply than steel. Hannah stared at him, one hand still pressed against her wounded shoulder. Blood had soaked through the torn sleeve and spread across the front of her apron. She had shielded him from 1 bolt, forced him away from 2 more, and uncovered the purpose of the entire attack. Now his guards closed around her. Captain Daniel looked at the Alpha King. Your Majesty, bind her. Logan had reached the council corridor, but he stopped when he heard the order. Slowly he turned. Suspicion left his face. Satisfaction replaced it. 2 guards took Hannah by the arms. Neither belonged to the men who had attacked the hall, yet their grip felt no less final. Ryan stepped toward Rebecca. The bolt had entered high beneath her shoulder, missing her heart. She remained conscious, breathing in short, painful gasps while Daniel's soldiers surrounded her. She needs a healer, Hannah said. Ryan did not look at her. She will receive one. Logan aimed at you, and the bolt struck her after you moved me. The words sounded cold enough to convince the hall. They nearly convinced Hannah. Logan emerged from the corridor with empty hands raised. Your Majesty, I tried to stop her from sabotaging the treaty. The weapons, the cord, the oil, they were all found near the waitress. Ryan looked toward him. You will remain under guard. Logan bowed. As you command. Too easily. He believed Ryan had chosen the visible evidence over the servant who had saved him. Hannah understood the plan only when Ryan approached her. He examined the blood on her shoulder without touching it. Then his gaze moved to the guards holding her. How long? He asked. Daniel frowned. How long for what? Ryan kept his eyes on Hannah. Between the click and the shot, her breathing slowed. This was not a question asked by a king condemning her. It was a measurement. Less than 2 breaths, she said. Ryan's expression remained unreadable. Then give me one. The words were nearly silent. Logan could not hear them. Hannah could. 1 breath to remain still. 1 breath to trust him. 1 breath before whatever came next. Ryan stepped away. Search her room, he ordered loudly. Bring every object connected to the weapons. Logan's mouth curved. Lady Rebecca opened her eyes. For one brief moment, fear entered them. Not fear of Hannah. Fear that Ryan wanted the planted evidence collected intact. The guards led Hannah through the servants' passage. Every step sent pain through her shoulder. She kept her eyes lowered while nobles watched her pass. Some whispered that she had arranged the assassination. Others stared at the blood she had shed saving the man who had just imprisoned her. The lower cell smelled of damp stone and old iron. A guard removed the bolt fragment from her apron pocket and locked it inside an evidence box. They did not know she had kept something else. The strip of blue thread from Rebecca's sleeve remained wrapped around her finger beneath the bandage. When the cell door closed, Hannah sat on the narrow bench and listened. Above her, boots moved through the council wing. Then came a sound through the ventilation shaft. A fine cord sliding across metal. Logan had not finished. He was resetting the mechanism. Captain Daniel appeared outside the bars carrying a lantern. He unlocked the door, but did not open it. The king ordered me to ask one question. Hannah stood. What question? Daniel lowered his voice. If Logan believes you are imprisoned, where will he go next? Hannah looked toward the shaft. The cord was moving west, toward Logan's private council room. He will destroy the trigger path. Daniel nodded. And if he thinks Ryan still doubts him? He will activate whatever part of the plan has not yet fired. A metallic click traveled through the wall, closer than before. Hannah's face went cold. That is not the balcony. Where is it? She looked upward. The courtroom. Daniel opened the cell. The king's trial begins in 10 minutes. Hannah stepped into the corridor. Then Logan is not planning to defend himself. Another click sounded above them. He is preparing to kill the witness before she can speak. The courtroom crossbow had been built to fire without a shooter. Hannah knew because the clicking did not stop when Captain Daniel opened the cell. The sound traveled through the ventilation shaft in measured intervals. Click. Pause. Click. A ratchet mechanism. Someone was winding tension into the line one tooth at a time. They moved through the servants' corridor while the trial bells rang above them. Daniel carried the lantern. Hannah carried the pain in her shoulder and the silver bolt fragment hidden beneath her bandage. "Where does the shaft lead?" he asked. "Behind the courtroom tapestries." "Logan's chamber?" "Past it." Hannah stopped beside an iron grate. The trigger cord crossed behind the bars, glistening with oil. She touched it lightly. Royal cavalry oil. Dark, resinous, and mixed with winter wax so weapons would not freeze during mounted patrols. Her father had used the same mixture before his death, not in a hunting accident. That was what the village had been told. He had returned home with crushed fingers, a silver burn across his palm, and one warning he refused to explain. Never trust a weapon that fires from an empty room. Hannah followed the line with her eyes. It passed through a pulley above the service bells, around 2 curtain rings, then disappeared beneath the courtroom wall. "The balcony was only the first mechanism," she said. Daniel examined the knots. "These are cavalry ties. Servants do not use them. Logan commanded the royal riders for 12 years. Hannah looked at him and signed every weapon's withdrawal. They reached the armory records before the trial began. One entry had been scraped nearly clean. Daniel held the parchment toward the lantern. A compact cavalry crossbow had been removed 6 weeks earlier. The signature beneath it remained visible. Logan Pierce. Daniel's face hardened. That proves he took a weapon, not where he placed it. Hannah unfolded the bolt fragment from her bandage. Blue thread still clung beneath the silver head. "Rebecca's sleeve?" "Yes, but the oil is Logan's." She turned the bolt. A shallow groove ran around the shaft. The mark made by a guide rail. Not the balcony weapon. The bolt had passed through a narrower channel. A weapon hidden inside furniture. "The council table," Hannah whispered. They ran. The trial had already begun when they reached the upper gallery. Ryan sat beneath the Black Wolf banner. Rebecca lay on a healer's couch near the witness rail, pale but conscious. Logan stood before the court in chains that looked secure from a distance. Lady Rebecca's eyes found Hannah above, then moved toward the council table. "Warning." Ryan ordered the evidence displayed. Silver bolts, trigger cord, enemy coins, a floor plan taken from Hannah's room. Every planted object arranged neatly beneath the candles. Logan smiled. The waitress had motive. Her father died after being dismissed from royal service. Hannah descended the gallery steps. "My father was never dismissed." The courtroom turned. Daniel placed the armory record on the table. "He discovered royal weapons being sold to enemy packs," Hannah continued. "The same mechanism used to kill him was built into this hall." Logan's smile vanished. Ryan looked toward the table. "Show me." Hannah traced the cord beneath the tapestry, through the ventilation pulley, and into the hollow base of the council desk. She pulled the service bell rope once. The internal gears shifted. A concealed panel opened. Inside rested a compact crossbow. Its bolt was not aimed at Ryan. It pointed toward Rebecca's witness couch. Logan had brought his accomplice to trial, so she could die before confessing. Rebecca began to speak. Logan moved first. The chain around his wrist fell open. A false link. His hand reached beneath the table and pulled the final release. Click. Hannah heard the sound. 2 breaths before death. She threw herself across the mechanism and jammed the silver bolt fragment between the rotating teeth. The gears locked. The bowstring snapped without firing. Daniel seized Logan from behind. Ryan crossed the courtroom and dragged Rebecca away from the line of fire. Silence settled beneath the banners. Hannah remained bent over the hidden weapon, blood reopening beneath her bandage. Ryan looked at the jammed gears. Then at Logan. "You built a murder into my court." Logan struggled against Daniel. "She built the evidence." Hannah removed the bolt fragment from the mechanism. "No." She held up the cavalry oil and the signed armory record. "I only knew which sound was wrong." The court heard Rebecca's confession before Logan stopped fighting. Captain Daniel forced the beta to his knees beside the hidden crossbow, while Ryan stood between the witness couch and the weapon built into his own council table. Hannah remained near the exposed gears, one hand pressed against her reopened shoulder. Rebecca's voice trembled. Logan promised the northern packs would blame Blackwood for the attack. Ryan would die during the treaty, and the false guards would kill enough witnesses to make peace impossible. The gathered warriors shifted beneath the banners. Ryan looked at Logan. "And Rebecca?" "She knew too much," Hannah said. Rebecca closed her eyes. "The courtroom crossbow was meant for me." Logan laughed through bloodied teeth. She helped build the plan. She also became the last person who could name you, Ryan replied. Daniel placed the signed armory record beside the cavalry oil and silver bolts. Hannah added the blue thread taken from Rebecca's sleeve. Then she spread the trigger cord across the table. The first weapon was hidden inside the western balcony, she said. The second was placed beneath the treaty platform. The third was built into this courtroom. She touched each section of cord. Service bell rope carried the pole through the servants' passages. Banquet rings redirected it through the walls. Royal cavalry knots held the tension. A northern alpha examined the line. No waitress could build this. No, Hannah said. But a waitress knows where every service rope travels. She looked toward Logan. And my father taught me what a loaded mechanism sounds like before it fires. Logan's chains rattled. Her father was a thief. Hannah faced him. My father discovered you selling royal crossbows to enemy packs. Daniel held up an older weapons ledger recovered from Logan's chamber. Entries had been disguised as hunting repairs. Payments had been hidden beneath cavalry supply totals. At the bottom of the final page was the date Hannah's father had died. The hall grew quiet. Ryan read the record once, then folded it carefully. Thomas Miller's name will be cleared before sunset. Hannah's throat tightened. She had imagined hearing those words for years. They did not feel like victory. They felt like a locked door opening. Logan suddenly drove his shoulder into Daniel. The false chain link he had used earlier still hung loose at his wrist. He tore free, seized the compact crossbow from the council table, and swung it toward Rebecca. If she died, part of the truth died with her. Hannah heard the mechanism tighten. Click. Down. Ryan pulled Rebecca from the couch. Hannah struck the service bell rope with her uninjured arm. The banquet curtain dropped from the ceiling between Logan and his target. The bolt fired into heavy velvet, losing enough force to fall across the stones. Daniel reached Logan before he could reload. One strike drove the beta to the floor. This time, iron cuffs closed around both wrists and were locked with Daniel's own key. Ryan looked at the fallen curtain, then at Hannah. You heard it again. The ratchet was damaged. It clicked louder. A faint expression touched his face. Not amusement. Pride. Logan and the false guards were taken below. Rebecca was placed under guard until every member of the conspiracy could be named. The Northern and Blackwood leaders signed the peace treaty before the hidden weapons were removed. No music played during the ceremony. No one wanted another sound concealed. When the final seal was pressed into wax, Ryan called Hannah forward. She stood beneath the treaty banners wearing a clean bandage across her shoulder and dried blood along the edge of her apron. Several nobles looked uncomfortable. Ryan noticed. Every warrior in this hall watched for a blade, he said. Every guard watched the doors. Hannah Miller heard the weapon hidden behind our own walls. He lifted a bronze key marked with the Blackwood wolf. From this day forward, she is Royal Warden of Signals and Hidden Arms. The title carried authority over ceremonial halls, warning systems, service passages, stored weapons, and every mechanism placed near the royal household. A nobleman stepped forward. You would grant such power to a waitress? Ryan's gaze hardened. I would grant it to the person who saved 2 packs from war while the rest of us were still listening to music. No one objected again. Later, after the hall had emptied, Hannah returned to the western balcony. The carved wolf had been removed. Only a hollow space remained inside the railing. Ryan found her there. He carried the silver wolf insignia shattered by the third bolt. You should be resting, he said. So should you. He placed the broken crest in her palm. You told me to keep still. You nearly turned around. I am not accustomed to obeying waitresses. Then you require practice. A quiet laugh escaped him. The sound surprised them both. Ryan looked at her bandaged shoulder. You stepped into the path of a silver bolt. There was no time to ask permission. There will never be a next time. There is always a next time for kings. He extended his hand. Then stay close enough to stop me. No guards watched. No court waited for an answer. Hannah looked at the man whose life she had saved and the king who had cleared her father's name. Then she placed her hand in his. Below them, workers dismantled the hidden crossbows and removed every poison wire from Silver Pine Tavern. For the first time since the treaty began, the hall contained no secret mechanism waiting to fire. Only the quiet sound of 2 people choosing not to step apart. The first warning came from a bell that had no rope. 3 nights after the peace treaty, Hannah stood beneath Silver Pine Tavern's eastern tower, while workers removed the final hidden wires from the walls. The bell above her rang once. Low. Hollow. Impossible. Every service rope had been cut and replaced under her supervision. Ryan entered the tower carrying a lantern. His black leather armor had been exchanged for a dark wool coat, but the silver crest at his throat remained cracked where the bolt had struck it. You heard it from the courtyard? Hannah asked. I felt it through the floor. She looked upward. The bronze bell hung motionless. No wind entered through the narrow windows. No bird rested on the frame. Yet dust drifted from the wooden beam as though something inside the wall had moved. Captain Daniel appeared behind Ryan. The workers found another chamber. Where? Hannah asked. Beneath the eastern stairs. They descended together. The hidden door had been concealed behind a stone wine shelf. Fresh scratches marked the floor where someone had opened it recently. Inside waited a narrow room lined with maps, mechanical drawings, and sealed wooden cases. Not Logan's work. Older. More precise. Hannah lifted the nearest parchment. It showed Silver Pine Tavern from above, every corridor reduced to black lines. Small red circles marked the treaty hall, the courtroom, and the servants' passages. A fourth circle marked Ryan's sleeping chamber. Daniel opened one wooden case. Inside lay 6 compact crossbows. None had been fired. Ryan's face hardened. Logan prepared more. Hannah shook her head. The oil is wrong. She touched the mechanism carefully. Logan had used cavalry oil mixed with winter wax. This weapon smelled of cedar resin and salt. Naval oil, used in ports far south of Blackwood territory. A folded letter rested beneath the final crossbow. Ryan broke the plain gray seal. There was no signature. Only one sentence. Pierce failed because he aimed at the king. Hannah read it twice. Daniel looked toward the red circle marking Ryan's chamber. Then who was the next target? A soft scrape came from the ceiling. Hannah raised one hand. No one moved. Above them, something rolled through the stone channel. Small. Metallic. A trigger weight. Lantern down, she whispered. Ryan lowered the flame. A silver wire appeared across the doorway, visible only when the light struck it sideways. Daniel had nearly stepped through it. Hannah traced the line with her eyes. It ran from the doorframe into the wall, then upward toward the bell tower. The bell was not a warning, she said. It armed the room. Ryan looked at the wooden cases. Hannah followed the wire beneath them. Each case was connected to a spring lock. Opening the wrong one would release every crossbow at once. Daniel stared at the case he had already lifted. The mechanism beneath it began to turn. Click. Hannah drove both hands against the lid and forced it closed. The gears stopped halfway. For one breath, silence held. Then another click answered from outside the room. Someone had heard the failed release. Footsteps retreated through the eastern passage. Daniel drew his sword and ran after them. Ryan remained beside Hannah. You knew the case was trapped. I knew the sound was wrong. His eyes moved to the maps. To whom? Hannah examined the fourth red circle again. Not Ryan's bed. The mark sat beside it. The narrow room where she had begun sleeping after becoming royal warden. A room connected to every service bell in the tavern. Her room. The message had not been written for Ryan. It had been written about her. Hannah looked toward the dark corridor where the footsteps had vanished. Logan failed because he aimed at the king, she said. Ryan understood. The next assassin intended to remove the woman who heard the weapons first. The assassin entered Hannah's room before she returned to it. She knew because the service bell beside her bed had been turned upside down. No servant did that. The bronze cup normally faced downward, ready to ring when a cord was pulled from the kitchens or royal chambers. Now its hollow mouth pointed toward the ceiling. A thin silver wire disappeared beneath its rim. Hannah stopped in the doorway. Ryan stood one step behind her. Captain Daniel had returned from the eastern passage with 2 guards and no prisoner. The footsteps ended at the laundry stairs, Daniel said. Whoever ran knew the servants' routes. Hannah raised one hand. Do not enter. Her room was small. A narrow bed. A wooden chest. A wash basin beneath the window. The bronze key of her new office rested on the table exactly where she had left it. Too exactly. The blanket had been folded. Hannah never folded it before patrol. Someone wanted the room to appear untouched. Ryan looked at the inverted bell. What happens if the wire moves? I do not know. Then we leave. If we leave without understanding it, they will build another. He stepped beside her. You are the target. That makes the mechanism mine to read. His jaw tightened. but he did not order her away. Hannah crouched at the threshold and followed the wire with her eyes. It crossed the floor beneath a strip of rush matting, passed under the bed, then entered the wooden chest. Daniel reached for the lid. Wait. Hannah touched the mat with the handle of a spoon. A quiet click answered beneath the bed. Ryan seized her shoulder and pulled her backward. Nothing fired. Not yet. The pressure plate is armed, she said. The bell hides the release sound. Daniel examined the ceiling. What is it meant to release? Hannah looked toward the window. Its shutters were closed, but cold air entered through a narrow gap near the latch. She lowered herself until her cheek nearly touched the floor. Cedar resin. Salt. Naval oil. The scent came from the bed frame. Move the lantern sideways. Ryan lowered it. Light crossed the carved wooden post. A black opening appeared inside the decorative knot. Not one crossbow. 4. Small bolts waited inside each corner of the bed, aimed inward toward the place where Hannah's body would rest. The pressure plate beneath the mattress would fire them when she lay down. Daniel's face hardened. They wanted her asleep. No, Hannah said. She pointed toward the inverted bell. They wanted me awake first. The bell cord ran through the wall to the royal chamber. If Ryan summoned her during the night, the bell would shift. The sound would make Hannah rise, cross the pressure mat, and return to bed after finding no message. The assassin had built confusion into the trap. Ryan stared at the mechanism. They studied your routine. And yours. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. A young maid appeared carrying folded linen. She stopped when she saw the guards. I was told Lady Hannah required fresh bedding. By whom? Daniel asked. The girl's face went pale. A man from the royal kitchens. Hannah looked at the linen. The folds were too stiff. Something metal rested inside. Put it down. The maid obeyed. A compact trigger handle fell from the sheets. Naval brass. A black anchor had been carved beneath the grip. Ryan picked it up. The Southern Fleet. Daniel looked toward the hidden crossbows. Blackwood has no naval enemies. Hannah examined the anchor. A small crown rested above it. Not an enemy symbol. A royal one. Someone connected to the throne had supplied these weapons. A whisper moved through the speaking tube beside the service bell. A man's voice. Calm. Close. You heard the room before it killed you. Ryan drew his sword. Hannah approached the tube. Who are you? A soft laugh answered. The man your father failed to expose. The line went silent. Then every service bell in Silver Pine Tavern began ringing at once. Not randomly. 3 short notes. Too long. A naval signal. Daniel looked toward the courtyard. What does it mean? Hannah remembered the red circles on the hidden map. Not one target. A sequence. Boarding order, she said. Below them, the eastern gates opened, and men wearing Blackwood armor began letting strangers into the tavern. The strangers entered Silver Pine Tavern in groups of 4. Not soldiers. Dockworkers. At least, that was what their salt-stained coats and rope-burned hands were meant to suggest. Hannah watched from the upper corridor as Blackwood guards opened the eastern gates and waved them through without inspection. Each man carried a narrow wooden case beneath one arm. Crossbow cases. Naval design. Ryan stepped beside her, sword already drawn. How many? 20 inside. More beyond the gate. Captain Daniel looked toward the ringing service bells. They are using our own signals. No, Hannah said. They are using one hidden beneath them. 3 short notes. Too long. Boarding order. The pattern repeated through kitchens, guest rooms, cellars, and guard posts. Servants froze because their usual bells had become meaningless. Loyal guards looked toward one another, waiting for commands they could trust. The attackers had not silenced the tavern. They had made every warning sound false. Below, the dockworkers opened their cases. Compact crossbows unfolded inside them. Ryan started toward the stairs. Hannah caught his sleeve. They expect you to descend. My guards are trapped below, and the eastern stair is marked on their map. A metallic scrape answered from beneath the first step. Daniel raised his lantern. A wire crossed the stairwell at ankle height. Ryan looked at Hannah. Another killing line. A funnel, she said. They want you moving through one narrow route. The bells rang again. 3 short. Too long. Then one low toll from the western tower. Hannah's breath changed. That final note did not belong to the naval sequence. Someone inside the tavern was answering. A servant. Or a prisoner. She closed her eyes and listened past the noise. Kitchen bell. Laundry bell. Cellar bell. One small bronze bell near the old wine lift rang between the others. Twice. Pause. Once. Her father's repair signal. Blocked line below. There is someone in the cellar, she said. Daniel frowned. How can you know that? Because whoever is ringing does not know the enemy code. Ryan understood first. They are asking for help. The three moved through the laundry passage instead of the eastern stair. Hannah used her bronze key to open a narrow service door hidden behind folded tablecloths. Cold air rose from below. The passage ended near the wine lift. A kitchen boy crouched behind overturned barrels, one hand still wrapped around the bell rope. Blood marked his temple. They took the guards, he whispered. They opened the gate from the old drainage room. Who ordered them? Daniel asked. The boy pointed toward the sealed door beneath the lift. A man with a black anchor. From beyond the door came the sound of gears turning. Hannah looked upward. The wine lift connected the cellar to every floor. Not for people. For crates. Its main chain passed through the central shaft beside the service bells. The strangers were not only entering through the gates. They were lifting weapons into the upper halls. Ryan placed one hand against the door. How many behind it? Hannah listened. Chains. Boots. A crank turning in sets of 4. 6. Maybe 8. Daniel raised his sword. Ryan stopped him. If we open it, they fire first. Hannah examined the wine lift. A counterweight hung above the shaft, held by a toothed brake. One release would drop the weight and pull the lift upward. The attackers expected to send their cases to the royal floor. They did not expect the mechanism to reverse. Cut the lower chain, she said. Daniel looked at the heavy iron links. That will drop the platform. Not if the counterweight falls first. Ryan moved to the brake lever. Tell me when. Hannah climbed onto the side beam and placed both hands against the service bell rope. It passed through the same pulley as the lift chain. 1 pull would ring the cellar bell. 2 would release the locking tooth. 3 would drop the weight. Her father's voice returned from memory. Never trust a machine until you know what it believes is holding it still. The crank stopped behind the sealed door. The attackers were listening. Hannah pulled once. The cellar bell rang. A voice beyond the door answered. Open it. She pulled twice. The locking tooth lifted. Metal groaned overhead. Ryan held the brake lever steady. Now, he asked. Not yet. Boots moved closer to the door. A trigger clicked. Hannah pulled the rope a third time. Now. Ryan released the brake. The counterweight fell. The wine platform shot upward. Behind the sealed door, men shouted as the rising chain tore the crank from their hands. Wooden weapon cases slammed into the shaft walls and burst open between floors. Daniel cut the lower chain. The platform stopped halfway, trapping the attackers' weapons above them. Ryan kicked open the cellar door. The first crossbow fired. The bolt struck the empty frame where the lift had been. Daniel entered low and drove the shooter into the wall. Ryan followed, broad shoulders filling the doorway as he disarmed the second man. Hannah saw the leader near the drainage gate. Black anchor beneath a small crown. Gray beard. Naval coat. He held no weapon. Only a brass speaking tube. You sound like your father, he told Hannah. She stopped. Ryan turned toward him. The man smiled. Thomas Miller heard the fleet before anyone else did. Hannah's fingers tightened around the rope. You killed him. No. He lifted the speaking tube toward the ceiling. I taught Logan how. The bells above changed again. Not boarding order. Retreat. Every stranger inside the tavern began moving toward the western exits. The gray-haired man backed through the drainage gate. Ryan lunged. An iron barrier dropped between them. The man's voice came through the bars. Your father died because he learned the king was never the true target. Hannah looked at Ryan. The naval leader's smile widened. The throne only matters because of the woman standing close enough to hear it fall. Then he pulled a brass lever. The western bell stopped. And beneath Hannah's feet, the entire tavern began to move. The tavern was not collapsing. It was turning. Stone groaned beneath silver pine as hidden gears rotated the central floor. Wine barrels rolled from their racks. Lantern chains swung toward the western wall. Above them, guests screamed as tables slid across the great hall. Hannah understood the mechanism before she saw it. The treaty platform, she said. It is mounted on the same foundation. Ryan caught the cellar beam as the floor shifted beneath them. What happens when it completes the turn? The western hall aligns with the cliff gate. Daniel's face hardened. The old loading doors. Silver Pine had once served as a mountain trading post. Cargo wagons entered through doors built above a steep ravine. Those doors had been sealed for decades. If the rotating floor aligned with them, Everyone in the great hall would be placed directly before an opening into darkness. The strangers were not retreating. They were clearing the path. Hannah seized the service rope. The mechanism must have a counterlock. Where? Ryan asked. Her father had repaired old merchant lifts, mill brakes, and hunting platforms. Every large machine needed two controls, one to move and one to prevent movement when the primary lever failed. She listened. The gears beneath them struck in groups of 6. On the 7th turn, a smaller tooth clicked near the wind shaft. There. Hannah pointed toward the floor beneath the trapped lift. Daniel drove his sword between 2 boards and tore one loose. Beneath it, a bronze wheel spun beside the main gear. Too fast to touch. Ryan removed his wolf fur cloak and wrapped it around both hands. What do I turn? Nothing. Hold it still. He reached into the opening. The bronze teeth tore through the fur and dragged him forward. Hannah caught his belt while Daniel braced Ryan's shoulders. Now, Ryan shouted. Hannah pulled the service rope twice. The locking pin descended. It struck the spinning wheel, bounced once, then slipped aside. The floor continued turning. Above them, the western doors began to open. Cold mountain air roared through the hall. Hannah heard servants shouting, dragging children and wounded delegates away from the edge. The naval leader's voice traveled through the speaking tube. You cannot stop a kingdom already moving. Hannah looked at the damaged locking pin. Its tip had been filed smooth. Sabotaged years ago. But the service bell hook beside it was iron. She tore the hook from the wall, wrapped the rope around its base, and lowered it into the gears. Hannah, Ryan warned. If it catches, the rope may take your hand. Then do not miss. She waited for the 7th strike. 1, 2, 3. The tavern turned farther. 4, 5, 6. Click. Hannah released the hook. Iron dropped between the bronze teeth. The mechanism seized. The force snapped the rope and threw Hannah backward. Ryan caught her before she struck the cellar wall. Above them, the great hall stopped less than 3 feet from the open cliff doors. Silence lasted 1 breath. Then loyal guards closed the exits. Daniel raised the iron barrier while Ryan pursued the gray-haired leader through the drainage passage. Hannah followed despite the pain burning through her shoulder. They found him beside the mountain gate, reaching for a final brass lever. Ryan placed a sword against his back. Do not move. The man smiled at Hannah. Your father died protecting the wrong king. No, she said. He died exposing men who believed servants could not hear them. Daniel removed the speaking tube from the leader's hand. Inside it were rolled orders bearing naval seals, Logan's signature, and payments authorized by noble houses on both sides of the treaty. The conspiracy had not targeted Ryan alone. It had targeted every person capable of preventing war. By morning, the gray-haired admiral and the remaining attackers were in chains. Their ledgers named the officers who had murdered Thomas Miller and armed Logan's rebellion. Ryan ordered Hannah's father honored before both packs. Then, before the rebuilt treaty table, he placed the bronze service bell hook in Hannah's hand. This stopped an entire hall. It was only a servant's hook. Ryan looked at the kings, guards, and nobles gathered around them. That is why none of us saw its value. He turned back to her. I did. Later, beneath the silent western bell, Ryan offered Hannah his hand. This time, no weapon waited behind the walls. She placed her fingers in his. Below them, servants repaired the damaged gears while soldiers carried away the last hidden crossbow. The king had survived because Hannah heard death approaching. The kingdom survived because, at last, everyone had learned to listen with her.